Hi, I'm Maya, and today I want to talk about Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. The first thing that drew me to this book was the little blurb on the back that says, "It's Lovecraft meets the Brontes in Latin America. What more could you want?" It just sounds like perfection to me. So I also really liked the inside cover. Just like an old school movie poster. Very cool. So just a brief summary. This book is set in 1950s Mexico, and it centers around Noemi, a young socialite who's rich and flirty and a lot of fun to read. And Noemi's father gets a letter from Catalina, who is his niece and Noemi's cousin. And Catalina has just been married recently, and she moved into a house called High Place with her husband and his family. And they never heard from her again after she got married. But now they get this letter, and she's saying that she can hear voices in the walls and that creepy, weird things are happening in the house. So Noemi's father thinks that Catalina needs to be institutionalized. So he sends Noemi to go investigate, to go visit Catalina and see what's going on. Noemi goes out to the countryside to the house called High Place. She sees her cousin, and she's been put on bed rest by her in-laws. And they tell Noemi that Catalina has tuberculosis, but Noemi starts to suspect that Catalina doesn't really have tuberculosis. Then Noemi starts noticing some weird things in the house, and yeah, things start to get really creepy from there. She notices that the house itself is strange, the servants are strange, that the family members are strange, and she notices some weird things in the cemetery in the backyard. This book gets very, very weird and very, very creepy. This book reminded me of a lot of things. It reminded me of the yellow wallpaper and The Color Out of Space. It also reminded me of The Haunting of Hill House, the book. I haven't seen the show. And the 1960s movie called The Haunting that is based on the book, The Haunting of Hill House. Really creepy. It also reminded me of The Turn of the Screw, and then the 1960s movie The Innocents, which is based on The Turn of the Screw. So just like a creepy haunted house, ghosts wandering around, and science and the supernatural woven together. This book also explores the themes of colonialism, racism, sexism, and trauma and healing. So that's all I'm going to say about the book without giving spoilers. But now I want to talk about some spoilers. So if you don't want to know what happens in the book, stop watching. But if you don't care about spoilers, keep watching. From the beginning, the mushrooms were freaking me out. I was like, what is up with the mushrooms? Because the inner art has mushrooms. And then the first meal that Noemi eats at the house, it has mushrooms in it. And then later she sees servants cleaning mushrooms. She sees a painting of a mushroom. So I was thinking that the whole story was just going to turn out to be one big hallucination. But that's not what ended up happening. It is a bit of a slow burn, a slow start. But as soon as things started getting weird, I was like, Noemi, get out of there. Get out of the house. Why are you still there? And I understand she wanted to save her cousin. That's very, very admirable. But at the same time, I was just like, you gotta run. Why are you still there? You're being stupid. The part of this book that scared me the most was when Noemi was taking a bath and she looked up and she saw a figure standing in the doorway. It's creeping me out right now just thinking about it. And I knew it was gonna happen as soon as she got in the bathtub because that's a classic horror trope. The bad guy always shows up when the heroine is exposed and at her most vulnerable. So I think I hated Florence more than I've hated any other character ever. She was horrible, just so controlling, so infuriating. I couldn't wait for her to die, and I was so glad when she did. Ugh, she's the worst. Of course, I also hated Howard and Virgil, and I'm really glad that they got their comeuppance, and I'm really glad Catalina got a piece of both of them because they deserved after what they did to her. I was very surprised that Francis was a good guy. I was very happy about it, obviously, because he's an interesting character. I was not expecting him to be good the whole time. I was waiting. It's like, this guy's too good to be true. Something's gonna happen. He's gonna secretly be evil. He's gonna reveal himself at the end of the story. But he didn't, and I was very glad. I'm glad that Noemi and Francis fell in love and had a happy ending. That made me really, really happy. I was not expecting that. One thing about this book that I wish was different was I wish we'd seen more of Marta, the medicine woman. I thought she was such a fascinating character, and I really would have liked to have dived deeper into her medicines and the stories that she knew. And I just feel like we could have explored her a little bit more. I really would have liked to have learned more about her. I'm really glad that the ending was happy and ambiguous. I was really worried that we were gonna have the classic trope of, oh, did you think the story was over? The villain's back and there's nothing you can do about it and we're all gonna die. So I'm really glad that didn't happen. It was implied that the fungus could come back and that the Doyle curse would keep going, but I like to think that the fungus and the curse are gone for good and that Frances and Noemi can just be happy. I wanted to talk a little bit more about colonialism and trauma and healing. So first with the colonialism, Catalina's husband is Virgil Doyle, and the Doyle clan are silver miners. And the mine has been closed for several years at this point, and they've run out of money, which is why Virgil married Catalina to get her money. The Doyle family moved to Mexico from England and then hired a bunch of indigenous people to work basically as slaves in their silver mine. There's this disease coming from the house, coming from this like system network of mushrooms that send out these spores into the house and affect the people living there. And the Doyle family is just very messed up, very twisted and sick. But they are aware of the mushrooms and they don't care that the mushrooms go and get all of their servants working in the silver mine's sick, and they all die, and they put them just in a mass grave. Basically, they don't give them any markers in the cemetery. It's just very sad to see how indigenous people are treated in this book, and of course to know that they are treated like that in real life as well, and not just in fiction. The big reveal at the end, when Noemi and Frances and Catalina are escaping High Place, they're running down to the basement, and they find the old mummy, basically, of Howard Doyle's wife. And her trauma and pain is what keeps the curse going. Having the wife being at the heart of all this just shows how powerful trauma is. Noemi ends up setting the mummy and the rest of the house on fire. And fire is very cleansing, very purifying, and that heals the trauma. And I just think it's really cool that, yes, it's supernatural, yes, there's some science involved with spores and hallucinations, but it's really about trauma and memory. The true ghosts are the sins of the people living in that house. Trauma, sins, wrongdoing, they can have very disastrous effects. The bad things that people do to each other and that people have done to them stick around in the ether, in the very substance of High Place, and it infects the house and the surrounding area, and it just makes it sick and putrid and awful. And so it made me really happy that all of that was just burned at the end, and that, I mean, it doesn't erase what happened, those awful things still happen, but it's implied that the wife, the mummy, is now at peace because she has been avenged and her husband's sins have come to light. Noemi is a fantastic character. I love her so much. I love how spunky she is. I love how fun and sarcastic and playful she is, but I also love how smart she is and how she can get down to business. I love how much she cares about her cousin, Catalina, and I love how loyal she is to her family. I love how developed she is and nuanced, and I love how we really know her. I like the way she talks. I like her voice. I think it's just fun to be in her head, even though it is third person. We feel very close to Noemi, and I think she's just so much fun. Frances is very sweet, very endearing, very quiet, and I think he compliments Noemi very well because she's so loud and outgoing, and they're like two halves of the same whole. I like how they're interested in each other's interests, and it's a very sweet love story, which I was not expecting. When I picked up this book, I thought it would just be more mystery, creepy, horror, which it is, but it also has a beautiful romance. So my book came like this, and they didn't have another one at the store, but I thought it was kind of fitting, kind of gnarled and beat up, just like High Place. Overall, this book is romantic, it's spooky, it's creepy, it's chilling, it's thrilling, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you give this book a read.